Hey guys, it's me, Karen Ashley. You know me as Aisha, the Yellow Power Ranger, and you are watching Enemy Secrets. But hey, join me next year at Ranger Stop and Pop, June 13th through the 15th in Atlanta, Georgia. It is our final year, so come and have a fun time with us. It is like a family reunion of Power Ranger fans, Power Rangers, and we're just gonna have the best time ever. It's morphin' time.
Well, first of all, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mark Walters, and this is Mark Pillow. That's not going to be confusing at all. Thank you for being here today at DayGaCom. I hope everybody's having a really good time. And Mark and I have, we've got a little bit of a history together. We actually did a live commentary of sorts for Superman 4, so this is our second time to do one of these things together, and I'm very, very happy to be up here with you. There's no person I would rather share the stage with. So thank you for being here at the show. First and foremost, we do want to, of course, plug your website, markpillow.com. So if anybody wants to find out more about you that you don't find out here, you can go to markpillow.com and find that out. I know everything there is to know about you, but I just kind of want to go back to the beginning. So when you first got into all this and the Superman franchise and everything, kind of talk about how that came about and where were you at in your life at that point when you got brought into this? Let's start with that.
I was 27, and I was actually in Denver on a play, but I'd been living in LA for about 5 or 6 years. And I kind of stepped away from pursuing acting work, and actually they came out to pay us. And the guy says, your agent's been trying to get in touch with you. And so I called him and said, guy, come back on the plane to LA tomorrow. So fly back, go out to Cannon, meet Sidney Fury. And the reason they kind of went and found me because I had met Sidney Fury's son a few years before. And they'd had a bit of a difficult time finding this nuclear man character. They were really looking for somebody in England. But his son said, I think I know who could play this part. Mark Pillow.
So they knew at that point they were going to shoot in the UK?
They knew this,
Okay.
yes, UK, which what they've done all.
Yeah.
I mean, they've done some stuff in Canada, but
Fine,
most of it's
yeah.
been, exactly.
Yeah.
So within 2 weeks, I was in London being fitted and meeting Gene and Chris, and you're sitting there going, what just happened? Amazing.
Now, it seems ever so fitting that we're here talking about this because we sadly just lost Gene, and you guys spent a considerable amount of time together. And I remember you telling me some really great stories about him, in particular his work ethic. So I guess, because I know a lot of people probably want to know about this, can you talk a little bit about what it was like working with Gene and what he was like as a person to deal with? We're getting dramatic music for effect, I think, right as we get into this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you know, thinking about Gene, one thing, when you got to the set, he's been there now, before the crew, before like anybody. An ethic of getting there early, locking in, so it's a great person to watch. This is how it's done. You get here, you bring your thoughts with you, you kind of walk it through without any attention. So that got me off to a great start, thinking about prep. And then I ate lunch with him 2 or 3 times a week. And I've seen a couple of interviews that were done over the years, and he has a softer demeanor. And that's the demeanor I know. We think of the harsh Gene Hackman, but in person, relatively soft-spoken, great sense of humor, wonderful stories. You find yourself just captivated spending time with him.
Yeah, I remember, I think you told me, if I remember correctly, he knew everybody's lines. Like, he didn't just memorize his lines, he knew everybody's lines. So he knew that helped him with the timing of everything.
And it's amazing to think about this. You think about Anthony Hopkins doing the same type of thing, where you just know him so well that, is it acting anymore or just being?
Yeah.
You were already there.
Yeah.
So.
That's fantastic. And then you just recently did an event with John Cryer. You guys got to link back up again after all these years. What was that moment like? Getting to see
Wonderful, absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
I haven't seen him since '86. Walked into the room, he's exactly the same. So much fun to be around. So
Yeah.
much fun to listen to his recollections of the film.
Yeah.
And taking pictures with him, and video, and hugging each other. I was starstruck.
Yeah. And you guys were, I remember you were posing with like the original costumes and everything. That's got to be wild. Like after all these years to see, not only see him again, but see like the original costumes and it's just amazing that stuff gets to survive all these years later.
It does. And
Yeah.
a lot of times, since there was probably 5 Nuclear Man costumes, occasionally I see one. It'll be the first time I've seen that one
Yeah.
since then. So, and you get close to it. There's like a part of you is part of that costume.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about Chris. Working with Chris, I've never heard a bad story about him. And I have to believe there's a reason for that, because he was the guy that we all wished and hoped that he would be.
Yes.
And just like kind and generous with his time and everything. When you guys were shooting those fight scenes together, you know, what was that interaction like? Was there any improv? Was it all in the script? Did you guys kind of like get to work with one another to figure out how exactly to make those scenes play in just the right way?
You know, we had it storyboarded to have certain ideas, but pretty much on the spot, making it happen. And of course, with always both of us big guys,
Yeah.
not to hurt each other. And because he was so used to playing Superman, cheating himself for the camera, me back and forth, and very giving on his ideas of his thoughts on how to throw punches or how to deal with Superman. And me being very willing to say, okay, let's do it this way. And he actually, with me, listening to my input as well, was very giving back and forth between the two of us. I think we worked well together when it came to physical scenes.
Yeah. And some of that stuff looks pretty like you guys weren't really holding back. Like you were going for it. Yeah.
One time he actually stopped me going, you know, Superman's supposed to win this thing. You know that?
That's fantastic. When you look back on that film, you and I talked about this rather candidly with one another about there is kind of this perception of that film is it's kind of, you know, it's cheaper than some of the other Superman films. But I feel like it has a charm to it because in a lot of ways it feels more like a comic book than some of the other Superman movies do, because of the fact that like the Nuclear Man character and the fight between them and just kind of his whole mission of that story. So it feels like that's a movie that I think at the time wasn't necessarily embraced that well, but over time has been kind of looked back on in more fondness. Do you feel that's true?
It seems like it's found its legs
Yeah.
in time, and people have gone back to it again.
Yeah.
Now I look at it with fond memories.
Yeah.
I see where things could have been different.
Sure.
But when I look at it now, I just remember the moments and how joyful it was to be there and what a privilege it was to be there. And it wasn't a day I showed up on the set going, I can't believe I get to do this and I get to dress in this.
Yeah.
It was, yeah. So
Everybody in that movie is giving 110%.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's what I feel like when whatever actually is the final product of the film, my experience has been that everybody is doing it the best they possibly can in that moment. And then they just have to let it go because it is out of their hands.
There is one story I'd like for you to tell that I enjoy whenever we talk about it, and that is the royal premiere and what you got to do in particular at the royal premiere.
Well, up to the day before, I had a tuxedo, but Canon people said, Mark, would you mind putting on the Nuclear Man costume? That came out of left field. So going to the Royal Command performance in Leicester Square with a lot of people and climbing out of that car with 10, 15,000 people and people clamoring on the car and having the bobbies making a change so you could walk through. And of course, it was the photo ops of having that costume on. And then standing in the line and getting to meet the royals, and you're given protocol, how to be. And then actually in the theater, I sat next to Princess Diana, and Charles was on the other side with Muriel. And this first time I've seen the film, and Diana asked some lovely questions. And I might have mentioned this before. I tend to be quite touchy when I'm speaking to somebody, and I found that as I was explaining something, I think I put my hand on her leg or something like that to explain it to him. And I found myself pulling back, going, "Oh my gosh, this is the future Queen of England," and I'm sitting here doing this with her. She was wonderful.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
What a great memory that was. Well, I'm sure you guys might have some questions. Would anybody like to ask an audience question? We'll be happy to take questions from you guys.
Yes,
Anybody? Don't be shy. Have I already covered everything? You look like you got something right there. You in the Superman shirt. No?
Did you end up was that your natural hair or was it a prosthetic?
Oh, that's a great
Oh my gosh,
question.
yes. That was my actual hair back in the day. And if I let it grow out, it wouldn't look like that. But you think of the 80s, we all had that big hair. I was blonde and had a mane. It was a mullet. I mean, it blew well in the wind too, didn't it?
Yeah.
That was my actual hair, yes.
Was that something that, like, when you went into audition, did you have that hair
I
at
had
that
that
time?
hair. They didn't.
So they didn't want to change
They
it?
didn't change me at all. Whatever
That's
you're
great.
doing, Mark, and I found that all the way through.
Yeah.
You do you, Mark. Whatever you want to do, you go ahead. We'll just, find the camera and we'll get it.
Yeah.
So a little bit of tweaking, but basically I was in fairly good shape when I started and just kind of kept that. And so, yeah, all of it, the hair. And I suppose that was part of the reason I was chosen. Same height as Christopher, both 6'4", both of us in pretty good shape, and I was comfortable with things like wire flying.
Yeah. What was it like shooting in Milton Keynes? I've been over there. It's kind of like, it's a big sort of industrial concrete area, lots of malls and things like that. But what was that experience like shooting there and having that double for Metropolis?
It was interesting because you thought, this is America in Britain.
Yeah.
On the street. So
It
it
is.
certainly felt that way.
Yeah.
I thought it was, love to have done it in the States, but I think it translated well.
Yeah.
Just being in the States.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else have a question? Yes, right there.
Was it your first movie role, and did you stay in the movie industry after that?
I had done a bit of 1 or 2 guest starring roles, but just very small. And then about 2 years after that film was done, I left for a year and a half and was on what at the time was the biggest co-production miniseries done in Europe. So we filmed in Poland, Czechoslovakia, and we were in Russia for 13 months. It was based on one of Jack London's books, a short story called Smoke Balloon. And I played a character, it was a journalist in Alaska, turn of the last century, gold rush times. So it was kind of a humorous series. So that was a year and a half more of work. And then a few years later went off to Belarus and did another film. But it was quite sporadic. So in that interim, I was learning that I needed to pivot and learn other things. And I got into wine, which I love, and teaching, educating, consulting on that, so in between. And then once I had a wife and a couple of kids, I really didn't like to leave them. At one time I went for 7 weeks. That was the longest I was ever separated from them. And it wasn't quite as cool as it used to be when it was just me putting stuff in storage and taking off.
I did want to ask you, doing the wire work stuff, was that, because I'm sure that was very new to you at the time, what was your experience like with that? Because I've seen Chris tell stories about, you never really quite get used to it, but, obviously it's used to sell the effect of the flying and everything. What was your memory of doing wire work?
Well, one of the reasons also is I was a skydiver. I had 300 jumps and I was a blue hang glider, so I was kind of used to being suspended. The idea of the wires, though, is trying to make the takeoff and landing looking like you're stepping out of things and stepping back in and making it smooth. It's quite harsh on your body, especially holding that plank, because anytime blue screen filming, you are going over and over and retaking. And actually, that's like the longest part of filming is principal photography, maybe 2 or 3 months, and then another 6 is all the blue screen flying stuff.
Yeah.
So it's meticulous, methodical, and there's always the angle, and you're never quite sure what you're looking at. But I can understand that Chris's back was probably shot by the
Yeah.
4th film.
Yeah, it's got to take its toll at some point. Also working with Mariel Hemingway, who you've reunited with as well over the years, and you guys, like, you just recently signed some posters together and whatnot.
Yeah.
What was it like working with her at the time? Because she was still kind of an up-and-coming actress, but she had some big films and whatnot. What was that experience like working with her?
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I think back on the first times meeting her, very giving, had done film,
Yeah.
had been nominated already, so was used to being in front of the camera. Again, very giving, not making any suggestions, but there's one shot where she has to slap Nuclear Man, and she whacked me all 3 times. And by the 3rd time, I'm like, she got me. And I finally saw her in Detroit back in 2022, the first time I'd seen her since. I said, you remember when you were slapping me across the face? Were you enjoying that as much as you looked like you were? Because she had a grin, like, oh, I enjoyed that, Mark.
That's fantastic. Anybody else have an audience question? Yes, right there in the red shirt.
Yeah, so you were talking about the principal photography and all the physical effort that went into the wire work and so forth. Were you able to maintain your kind of workout schedule outside of that? What did you and Chris do during shooting, or was shooting itself enough of a physical challenge to keep yourself in shape?
Yeah, a lot of times on the way home, I was a member of Gold's Gym. So I would go after work and go there 4 days a week and just take the tube home to train. So was certainly training all through that pretty consistently, yes, trying to maintain that physique for that.
Right there.
Yeah, so my question is there any one Christopher Reeve story that you've had where you interacted with him that you cherish the most?
I think filming on the moon, because that's the time we really got to spend time together and to talk about things. And he directed that sequence. So I cherish that 2 weeks or so of just him and I all day long, back and forth, making things work, retaking things, trying new ways. That's what sticks in my memory as something I wouldn't part with.
That film was, in a lot of ways, it was a real passion project for him because he was so much a part of it. You know, like you said, directing certain sequences throughout it, but also a big part of the story. Did you get the sense when you were shooting it that it meant a lot to him on a personal level?
Very much so. I felt like he wanted to address nuclear something. He wanted to kind of put like a little bit of a political spin on it. So I felt his heart was very much part of it. I thought, and at the time, I think he believed it would be the last time he would play the characters. He wanted to go out very much on a high.
Yeah.
And it was true to his heart. He was a big part of writing the script. And it was very evident spending time with him.
Was it kind of surreal for you when you step foot on set and you see him in that costume? Is it kind of like, I can't believe I'm here doing this moment?
I can't even describe that. It's amazing to see, and to see him step into it. Like maybe see him back in makeup, he just showed up and did. But when he put on that costume, he walks toward you. I can't tell you. Superman walks into the room. It's unbelievable. He is as striking as you would imagine.
Yeah.
Him in that costume, and you're taken aback the first time you saw it.
Yeah, I would imagine so. That was great. Anybody else have a question?
What's just what's it like to be a part of the legacy that is Superman? I mean, it's, obviously we're getting ready to see a new Superman brought to life, and just to know that you're a part of that, and notably a character probably with the man that's probably most beloved is Superman too, I guess.
That's a wonderful question, because over the years, this has all come back around again. And seeing the love that people have for Superman, for Christopher, and then with the documentary that just came out about it. So going out into the world and being part of Chris's last time wearing the costume, and as it's moved forward with a different Superman, to be part of the history of Superman. I mean, you can't take that away from somebody. Everywhere I go, and then also when I speak about that time, as I honor that time, and the Superman legacy as well, I'm incredibly proud to be part of it.
Yeah, it's kind of unlike a lot. I mean, as far as comic book movies go, I can't think of any franchise that has had the impact. Maybe some of these new Marvel movies, but it's so many generations love it, and I think it's something that like even parents today can introduce to their kids, and they still find something they can connect to with it. So that's got to be very meaningful to be a part of that. I think so. Did I miss anybody? Did anybody else have a question? Do I see a hand right there?
Yes, sir. I was wondering, what was your, did you have continued contact with Mr. Reeve after the movie and after the accident and everything? How did that go?
I saw him a couple of years after the film, so well before the accident. We were at some event. But I would say to anybody that usually in that business, everybody kind of moves on. They're on to new projects. So I contacted him a couple of times. I saw him out a couple of times. The last time I saw him was probably 1990, and then not again.
Anybody else? Yes, right there.
What was it like whenever you were getting fitted for your outfit? Did you have any input on that, or what did you think of your outfit?
That's a great question, because the original Nuclear Man costume was actually quite different. And I can't remember exactly, but it seemed like it had sleeves, it was all gold, it had a small star in the middle. I think if I remember, I only saw it one time, it might have had briefs, so like a similar style to Chris's. And I kind of I saw that, and I had my own idea. And I kind of drew something out, and they loved the idea, which now looks more like more of the one-piece Superman costume you see now. And within 2 or 3 days, they had built that costume. And they came up with the idea of the sleeveless and the gauntlets and all that. So yes, I'm very proud and honored to say I was a little part of the designing of that costume. And I thought it came out pretty cool, even when I see it now. Great costume.
Yeah, there's a lot of like little details in there that I think are really great. And yeah, it holds up, especially when you look at some of the costumes and other similar types of movies at that time. I think it looks great by today's standards. So, anybody else? Yes, right there.
So
Welcome
you-
to you next.
So you talked about how you got your role, but once you got the role, what things did you do to prepare to be this character? Did you ever go back and read the comics? Did you watch the previous movies? How did you kind of get into the mindset of Nuclear Man?
Well, one thing, I'd seen all the movies. When I was growing up in Africa, we had one comic book, which was Superman, so that's the one I read. So I was very aware of that character. I had watched and I'd seen the three, Zod and Ursa and Non in before. So as I thought about it, and Nuclear Man and what he was projected as, I really felt like I wanted to challenge Superman. I wanted this character to be close to an equal. That if it was going to be a battle, it was going to be close. That you weren't going to know who was going to win coming out. So that was kind of my prep with it. I think the physicality of it, the moving, I wanted it to be rather stoic, so I thought that way. There's sometimes where I do roar, but most of the time it's just a glare. That kind of-
Saw one over there.
Yeah, so it was a Canon film. Did you meet or have any interaction with Menachem and Yoram?
I met Menachem a couple of times. Interesting guy. I think he came out to London once while we were doing it, and I met him once back in LA. He was juggling a dozen things at one time, all the time, which is what Canon was known for, that type of thing. So yeah, nice interaction with him, had a nice conversation.
What do you remember most about Sidney J. Furie as a director, like stylistically?
You know, because I had looked at his body work before we got to it, and I thought it was interesting to give him the challenge of Superman. And I think that he really had the character set down. I'd love to have seen what he would have done. A bit more free reign, maybe a bit more of the money that he needed. But he had a great way of working with actors and character development. He's not a yell action kind of guy. He's more probably closer to Mr. Eastwood, where just kind of gently moving into it. So I really liked his style, and I think the actors very much trusted him.
Yeah. You mentioned something that I guess we probably should have talked about at the beginning, and in case anybody isn't aware, I'm sure you've probably heard the stories, but this was a film that, like, in production, they were told your budget has been cut like in half.
In half.
And so, were you present at the time when they kind of had that realization and were like, hey, guess what? You lost half your budget.
You know, for one thing, I never heard anything about that till actually years later.
Yeah.
And I do wonder at a certain point if I noticed that people very much involved were concerned. That's all I really, and I didn't see as much of Sidney, but I had no idea. Those are expensive films to shoot. You start off with a $36 million budget, you cut it down to 18. It's hard to film that type of film, that kind of special effects. So I didn't know at the time that this was all, I just showed up with the best I could each day.
Yeah. Well, and in all honesty, with the exception of certain effect shots, I feel like a lot of the movie looks just as good as the other movies in terms of like where it's shot and how it's put together and whatnot. And like I said, everybody's given 110%, so it doesn't feel like anybody on the set was giving half the performance. So I think that's kind of one of the things that gives it the charm that it has even today.
I hope so.
Absolutely. Anybody else? Did I miss anyone? Okay. Oh my goodness, what happened?
Time's up.
Oh, no.
I have one quick question.
Oh, there we go.
We always hear from actors after films are made about makeup time. How did you, from your time going into makeup to getting out, did you spend a lot of time in makeup, or?
Mine wasn't that much. I mean, you don't really see it so much on film, but it was quite a bit of gold.
To give your skin kind of like a nuclear look.
Yes, exactly. And occasionally using the nails, that took a little while to put in. And at one point, we did test out contact lenses, and we decided not to go with those. So for me, it wasn't that big a deal. Once the costume was on, it's like, don't move for the next 12 hours because you don't want to wrinkle it. But I had an easy time compared to what
Oh,
people
okay,
have
good.
had.
And one last question.
Mhm, sure.
When you roared, did you have to practice that several times before the director said,
Oh, no, that's in me.
oh, okay, okay, thank you.
Let's go.
I thought I saw one more. Yeah, right there.
Did any of the actors give you advice that still sticks with you today?
Oh, that's a good question.
You know, I keep thinking back to what would Gene have said? He wasn't that type of person that would say, do it this way or do it that way. He'd just say, show up prepared, hitting your marks, do the best you can, know your dialogue. But I think he had that way about him that he just kind of went in and just was. You know what I mean? And so he kind of said, just don't read too much into it. Know what you need to do, go where you need to go. Because it becomes very technical hitting these marks and things like that for the camera. But that was pretty much it. Make sure you don't cheat toward the camera, which you feel an impulse to when you're not really good at it yet. That's pretty much it.
Yeah. Was it, I would imagine, as great, like you were saying earlier, being in the presence of Chris as Superman, that when you walk on set and you see Gene Hackman, because it's Gene Hackman, I mean, he's like one of the greatest actors that ever lived, that's got to be a little intimidating in and of itself at some point, right?
And meeting him the first time. One thing, he's taller than I thought he was going to be.
Yeah, yeah.
He's 6'2". And back then, I think he just came off Hoosiers. I mean, he was doing 5 films a year. Nobody was working more than he was. So, of course, being in the presence of that, and you find yourself watching what he does, you really, even if you're not working and he's working, I'm back off camera watching how he moves himself around the set. He's an absolute consummate pro.
Yeah. Fantastic. Anybody else? Yes, I see your hand right there.
What's your favorite line from the movie?
Your favorite line? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Favorite line in the movie?
Destroy Superman. Yes. How about that one? Yes, sir.
Yes.
Can you still do the roar?
Can you still do the roar?
No, it's probably in there. I probably wouldn't be speaking the rest of the day. I haven't made that much noise in a long time. I'm sure I could find it.
I imagine that was probably manipulated too with like some animal noises and things.
Oh, I would probably.
Yeah. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. I did want to mention a couple of quick things. So Mark just signed the last of some posters he had that were signed by Gene Hackman, but he does still have posters that are signed by Mariel Hemingway. I believe there's 3 of those left. So if you guys want an opportunity to get something that I'm sure a lot of people would be very jealous of, you can get one of those in the booth. I also want to once again plug markpillow.com for more information. And I just want to say, we've done this before. I never get tired of talking to you. You exude such positivity as a person, and I just think you're like one of the greatest guests that anyone could ever meet at one of these shows. So thank you for being here, and thanks for taking the time.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Let's give Mark a big hand.
Thanks, buddy. Oh, so good. You
Yeah.
too.